Haven 7 stirred gently in the soft hum of morning routines. The artificial sun overhead cast golden beams through the reinforced dome, glinting off a mural of handprints, tiny fingers from every species who had once found refuge here. Commander Asha Rourke stood still, arms crossed, watching the children play. A three-tusked Yuli boy zipped by on his hoverboard, laughing. A human girl chased after him, shoelaces untied, her cheeks red with laughter. The scene looked like peace. But Asha knew better than to believe in appearances. "Roll call complete, Commander," said Officer Lon, his voice clipped through her comm. 47 children present. "No incidents." "Thanks, Lon," she replied, eyes still scanning the courtyard. "Keep the patrol tight. I don't like how quiet the comms have been from the neighboring zones." She turned to leave, her boots echoing off the stone path. As she neared the command center, a siren wailed, short, sharp, and entirely out of place. Not the accident tone. Not a drill. It was a perimeter breach. She was already sprinting before the message came through. Inside the control room, data scrolled across the translucent screen in angry red lines. 3 vessels, massive, were entering the neutral expanse zone. No clearance. No transponder. Asha's blood turned cold. "ID them," she snapped. Lan's fingers flew across the panel. Cross-referencing hull signatures. Confirmed. Ziraxi class. Military. The room shifted, the light somehow colder now. The Ziraxi hadn't entered human space since the ceasefire 6 years ago. That they were here meant one of two things: madness or war. A low beat pulsed. A transmission request. "Put it through," Asha said, already bracing herself. The hologram flickered into shape. A towering figure with armored plates of jet and emerald green. Cold, intelligent eyes studied her like prey. She recognized him instantly. Overseer Varnak Trell. Her mouth went dry. "You care for the young now, Commander," he said. His voice rumbled like shifting stone. "Strange. You were once quite effective at ending lives." "State your reason for entering restricted space," she said, keeping her voice level. "Your presence violates 3 interstellar accords." "I come not for treaties." His eyes narrowed. "I come for reclamation." The hologram dissolved. The silence afterward was sharp, suffocating. "Prep the outpost for lockdown," Asha barked. "Move the children into sub-level shelters. All hands on emergency protocol." Lon hesitated. "We don't have the firepower, Commander. Haven 7's barely armed." "I know." She turned, hand pressed against the old metal panel beside her. She remembered when they built this place, when peace seemed fragile but possible. Now it felt like dust. "Get me the emergency beacon," she said. Lon blinked. "The old one? The Alliance channel?" "Yes." "Activate it. All species. Even the ones we don't trust." In the underground shelter, the children huddled in quiet confusion. One of them, a tiny girl named Lena, tugged Asha's sleeve. "Are the stars broken?" she asked. Asha knelt, brushing the hair from Lena's face. "No, sweetheart. Just a little cloudy today." Lena pointed upward. "But the sky is glowing purple." Above ground, the first wave began, low-flying drones scanning the surface, marking points for orbital targeting. Plasma signatures rippled across the sky like northern lights, only deadlier. Back in the command center, Lan's voice broken again. "Ma'am, that emergency signal?" Someone answered. Asha's heart skipped. "Human?" "No," he said slowly. "It's a Shy-Hull freighter." Her jaw clenched. The Shy-Hull had been enemies once, vicious insectoid tacticians with no love for humans. But the signal had been a long shot. She couldn't afford pride now. "Let them dock," she said. "If they're hostile, we deal with it then." A beat passed. Then a dry chuckle from Lon. "The pilot says he's here because of a girl." Said she once called him Papa. Asha blinked. She knew that child. Kira, half Shy-Hole, half human. She remembered when the little girl arrived 4 years ago, barely speaking. Maybe peace hadn't been a lie after all. She took a breath and looked around the war-ready control room. Officers working quietly but fast. The distant sound of scared children echoing through the walls. Her heart was tight, but steady. Her hand moved to the holster at her hip. War had come to Haven 7. Not in fleets or invasions, but in one alien's refusal to let go of hate. She would answer with something stronger. Not just firepower, but with unity. The Shy-Hole freighter docked like a bruised insect dragging itself home, its engines wheezed, outer hull scorched from old battles. Asha waited at the airlock, flanked by 2 armed officers. No one spoke. The hatch hissed open, releasing a cloud of recycled air and the distinct chemical musk of Shy-Hole physiology. Then came the pilot, tall, angular, and encased in dull silver exoplates. His 6 fingers tapped a rhythm against the holster at his hip. His compound eyes flicked toward Asha. "I am Jorel," he said. "I received the beacon. I've come for the children." Asha kept her stance neutral. "Which children?" "All of them," he replied. "But one in particular. My daughter, Kira. Is she safe?" A beat passed. Then Asha stepped aside. "She's in the shelter. Alive." Jorel's shoulders slumped, a gesture that looked strange on a Shy-Hole. Not relief exactly, but something close. They walked through the corridor side by side, not as allies, not yet, but no longer enemies either. The sounds of Haven 7 had changed. Gone were the children's voices. In their place, the distant thud of impact tremors and the whine of recharging plasma fields. "You know what Varnak wants?" Asha asked. Jorel nodded. "Yes. And it's worse than you think." She narrowed her eyes. "He's after the hybrid child," he said. "The one called Lena. She's not just a child, she's proof." "Of what?" "Of a war crime." Jorel's voice lowered. "Varnak's. During the last offensive, he took captives against the Accord. Human captives. One of them was Lena's mother." Asha's stomach clenched. "And Lena? Is his biological daughter." In the command center, Lon pulled up satellite visuals. The Ziraxi had formed a blockade pattern around the outpost. 2 destroyers hung like vultures in orbit. Ground drones began assembling near the south ridge, prepping for breach. "We've got less than an hour," Lon said. Asha turned to Jorel. "Can you fight?" The Shy-Hole's eyes blinked independently. "You'll need more than me." Asha stepped forward. "There are 38 human staff here. 5 ex-military. 1 med drone. That's it. I'll reach out to old contacts. Not all who fought stayed loyal to their cause. Some of us lost more than we gained." She paused. "Why help us?" Jorel looked at her without blinking. "Because my daughter still calls this place home." Minutes later, Jorel was inside the outpost's tech bay, reprogramming a batch of decommissioned drones. Sparks lit the room. Lon supervised with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "These models haven't been used since the Vesta skirmish," Lon said. "Then they remember war better than you," Jorel replied flatly. Asha stepped in. "Status? We're boosting the perimeter with motion mines and rerouting power to the eastern field generator," Lon said. "It'll hold, for a little while." "Good. We buy time," Asha said. "Just enough to evacuate the youngest first." Jorel looked up. "You can't run." "I'm not planning to," she said. "But if I die, those kids still get out." Down in the shelter, the children huddled together, their eyes too wide, too quiet. Kira ran into Jorel's arms, throwing herself at him with a force that cracked his exoribs. He didn't flinch. "You came," she whispered. He rested his head against hers. Of course. Lena stood near the back, clutching her teddy bot tighter than ever. Asha crouched beside her. Lena, she said gently, I need you to stay with the others. Do exactly what the med drone says. Lena looked up. Why does that man want me? Asha hesitated. Because he's afraid of what you represent. I don't understand. That's okay. You don't have to. Outside, the first wave of enemy drones breached the ridge. Plasma tore through the air, striking the perimeter shields with thunderous force. Alarms blared. Dust rained from the ceiling. Jorel stood beside Asha on the command deck, watching the scanners. 3 more minutes, he said. Then the second wave. Let's surprise them. She keyed her mic on. Now. Across the compound, reactivated drones, half-rusted but deadly, launched from hidden cradles. They flew in erratic spirals, confusing the Zeraxes' targeting systems. The first enemy crawler exploded in a burst of blue flame. Cheers erupted through the comms. Nice shot. Lon shouted. It's not over, Asha warned. Varnak hasn't shown his face yet. He's waiting. Jorel turned. Then we bring the fight to him. In a hidden armory Asha had hoped never to open again, she unlocked a long case marked Redline. Inside, a compact fusion launcher and a set of worn tactical armor. She strapped in, her hands moving from muscle memory. Her old self, the one from the war, slipped back like a shadow. You're not the only one with something to protect, she said quietly. Jorel, now re-equipped in a full Shy-Hole battle rig, nodded. Then let's protect them together. The skies burned violet, the earth trembled, and somewhere beyond the ruins of the outer compound, Varnak prepared his final strike. But Haven 7 was no longer alone. And for once, the war-weary veterans of rival species stood not apart, but side by side. Ready. Lena was gone. Asha stared at the empty corner of the shelter where the girl had been just minutes ago. The med drone's sensors buzzed uselessly, unable to locate her heat signature. She slipped out during the last tremor, Lon said over comms. We're sweeping the east corridor. Asha didn't answer. She was already moving, boots pounding down the steel steps, her pulse louder than the alarm klaxons. Her mind screamed one word, over and over. Varnak. Smoke curled through the west wing where plasma strikes had buckled part of the ceiling. Cracked lights flickered above. The scent of scorched metal and ozone lingered, thick as tar. Asha's visor scanned for biosigns. Nothing. She rounded the corner, and froze. A shimmering distortion stood ahead. Cloaking tech. Advanced. Drop it, she ordered, aiming her sidearm. The shimmer resolved into Varnak Trell, tall and still, holding Lena gently, too gently. His clawed hand rested on her shoulder. She came to me, he said calmly. No tricks. Lena looked dazed, eyes wide but dry. Let her go, Asha said, stepping closer. Now. I am her father, he replied. Then you're a damn disgrace. Varnak's expression tightened, barely. I did not come to harm her, he said. I came to erase what cannot exist. She's a child. She is a reminder. Asha's voice dropped. Of your crimes. Varnak didn't flinch. She was born of weakness. A moment of failure. Her existence risks everything. She risks your reputation, Asha snapped. Your career. Your legacy of blood. That's what scares you. Lena's voice broke through the tension. He said I was a mistake. The silence was deeper than the rumble above. Asha's gun hand lowered slightly. Lena, she said softly. Do you want to go with him? The girl shook her head. Just once. Barely more than a breath. Then we're done here. Varnak's eyes narrowed, and he moved. The first strike was fast, brutal. Asha rolled, plasma bolt hissing past her ear. She fired back, twice, grazing his shoulder. Varnak dropped Lena and lunged, claws out. Asha met him head-on, slamming her elbow into his jaw, following it with a sharp knee to the chest. He stumbled back, more stunned than hurt. "You fight well," he grunted. "I've had practice killing your kind," she growled. He charged again, but this time, another form intercepted him. Jorel. Clad in full battle armor, the Shy-Hole warrior crashed into Varnak like a battering ram. The two aliens collided with a roar, tearing through the wall and into the open courtyard, scattering debris. Asha grabbed Lena and pulled her into cover. "You okay?" she asked. Lena nodded, tears running silently down her cheeks. "Stay here. Don't move unless I come back." Outside, fire and steel danced. Jorel fought like someone with nothing left to lose. Varnak was stronger, but Jorel was faster, more desperate. Claws met armor, plasma met reinforced plates. Asha watched for a second, heart hammering. Then she moved, circling behind Varnak, slipping through shadow and ruin. She found the shot. Just as Varnak pinned Jorel to the ground, fangs bared, Asha fired. The blast struck his side, searing through armor. He screamed, a terrible, alien sound, and turned. "You," he snarled. "Still standing," she said. He raised a claw, but Jorel grabbed his leg, yanking him off balance. Asha didn't hesitate. She lunged, driving her combat knife deep into the joint at his neck. Varnak roared, flailing. He threw her off, sent her crashing into a wall, but the damage was done. He staggered back, bleeding silver from the wound. "You don't understand," he hissed. "No," Asha said, rising slowly. "You don't." Varnak collapsed to one knee. Jorel stood too, battered, barely upright. "She's not your shame," Asha said, her voice sharp, clear. "She's your consequence. But she doesn't have to be your end." Varnak looked at Lena, who watched from behind rubble, clutching her bear. Something changed in his face, not regret, not softness, but recognition. "You will raise her?" he asked. Asha nodded. "With protection. And truth." He dropped his blade. "Then I am defeated." A final breath, deep and harsh. Then he fell, still alive, but silent. 2 hours later, the enemy fleet pulled back. Asha stood outside the dome, helmet off, watching the skies clear. Burnt metal glinted underfoot. Drones buzzed overhead, repairing broken walls. Children had returned to the courtyard, quiet, but safe. Jorel sat nearby, bandaged. One arm hung useless, the other holding Kira close. "You're staying?" Asha asked. "For now," he said. "She needs roots." Asha nodded. "They all do." Lena walked up to her, tugging her sleeve. "Are the stars safe again?" Asha looked up. For once, they were still. "Yes," she said. "Because we stood together." Lena leaned against her, tired but calm. "They didn't just fight for survival," Asha whispered. "They fought for what comes after." And above them, Haven 7 stood, not just as an outpost, but a promise. One forged in fire, sealed by unity, and guarded by those who had once called each other enemy. The Galactic Peace Council convened in silence, 12 towering chairs, each belonging to a different species, arranged in a circle under the vaulted glass ceiling of Unity Hall. Outside, stars shimmered over Core Delta Prime, a planet chosen for its neutrality. Inside, tension hung heavy. Every representative was present. Except one. The human seat, black metal trimmed in copper, with a single Earth sigil carved into its back, stood empty. Until the doors opened. Commander Asha Rourke entered, boots echoing across marble etched with the Peace Accord's original signatures. She wasn't in uniform, just a dark coat and her repaired tactical vest. One of her sleeves had been cut and stitched hastily. A burn scar peeked through. She didn't bow, didn't speak. She simply walked to the chair and sat down. Whispers rippled across the chamber. The high voice of the Trell, a crystalline being of light and sound, rose. By law, this chair was not to be filled unless summoned. I wasn't summoned, Asha said. I'm here by necessity. Another voice, gravelly and sharp, cut in, Representative Thal of the Zeraxi Confederacy. You have no standing here, Commander. You are not a diplomat. No, Asha said. But I am the one who stopped your overseer from igniting another war. Thal shifted, nostrils flaring. Varnaktrel acted without council approval. We've disavowed his attack. Too late, she replied. He brought destruction. I brought survivors. She tapped the holopad on the table. A projection flared up, images of Haven 7. Burned walls. Injured children. Cross-species rescue efforts. Lena, standing beside a Shy-Hole child, hand in hand. I didn't come to beg for sanctions, Asha said, voice calm. I came because every time this council ignores what's happening in the fringes, children pay the price. Murmurs rose again. A Vulgary representative tilted their head. You wish to make a request? No, Asha said. A demand. Silence returned. Recognize Haven 7 as a protected unity zone. Multi-species jurisdiction. Council funded. No military incursions. No covert monitoring. And no politics. Thal scoffed. You presume much. I've earned the right, Asha replied. You're not fighting humans anymore. You're fighting the future. And it doesn't belong to just one species. After the session, Asha stood in the garden outside Unity Hall, watching the gravity-fed waterfalls spiral into the lake below. Jorel joined her, his movements slow but steady. The light danced on the outer shell of his repaired battle suit, now softened with a strip of white cloth tied around one arm, Kira's ribbon. They listened, he said. Some did, she replied. Others are just waiting to see what benefits them most. And the rest? She exhaled. Hoping I go away. Jorel tilted his head. You won't. No, she said. I won't. A hover drone approached, blinking with an incoming message. Asha read the display, her lips tightening. What is it? Jorel asked. The high voice just sent confirmation, she said. The motion passed. He blinked. You won? Asha didn't smile. The chair won't be empty anymore. They've assigned a permanent envoy to Haven 7. Who? She met his eyes. Me. Back at Haven 7, the reconstruction had already begun. The dome was being replaced with transparent graphene sheets. Classrooms were being refitted. Defense systems were reinforced, but hidden, never visible to the children. Lena walked through the courtyard with her repaired teddy bot under one arm. She stopped near the mural of handprints and added her own, pressing her palm into fresh blue paint, then onto the wall. Next to it, she wrote one word. Peace. Kira stood beside her, dipping her own clawed hand in paint. Different shapes. Different blood. Same future. Later that night, Asha sat alone in her quarters, reviewing reports. Supply manifests, budget approvals, teacher vetting applications. Normal things. Mundane, even. But it felt good to see logistics instead of casualties. A soft knock tapped at her door. It opened without waiting. Lon stepped in, holding a steaming cup of real coffee, a rare luxury. You look tired, he said. I'm used to it, she replied, accepting the cup. Thanks. He leaned against the doorway. Jorel's staying longer. I figured. He wants to build a library. Asha looked up. Seriously? Lon grinned. Said it's time as people learned how humans write stories. She chuckled softly. Weird thing, war. Makes enemies, then makes families. He said something else, Lon added. Said you're the only human he'd follow again. She paused. That scares me more than it flatters me. Lon nodded once, then turned to go. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's normal again. But just before she did, Asha walked to her window. The stars above Haven 7 were clear. No warships. No interference. Just stillness. And for the first time in a long time, she let herself believe it might last. Only one thought lingered. If even sworn enemies could protect children together, what else might they build next? She closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she'd start finding out.